Hello viewers, myself is Dr. Neeta and you are watching my channel Learn Literature with Dr. Neeta. So let us begin today's topic. Hello dear students, today we would learn about the third part of narrative techniques, and in it we would cover point of view and setting. And as all of you know that in the first part of the narrative techniques I have described about plot as a narrative technique, and in the second part I described characterization, art of characterization as a narrative technique, and today point of view and setting. So come, so let us understand what is point of view. Point of view is the perspective from which the story is told. So if you are trying to understand the point of view, the first question that you should ask after looking at the story is, who is telling the story? Who is the narrator of the story? The narrator may be of the first person, or he may be the second person, or he may be the third person. So we would understand here these 3 points of view, the point of view of the first person or the second person or the third person. So it refers to the position of the narrator or the protagonist through whom the events of the narrative are presented to the reader or the audience. So we understand the story from the perspective of the person who is narrating the story. So it can be the first person, for which the narrator uses I. It means the person with whom the things have happened himself is telling the story, and that is why the pronouns like I, me or we are used. This point of view provides a direct and intimate connection between the reader and the narrator. It is quite an interesting thing when the person with whom the things have happened himself is telling the story. It immediately makes a connection with the reader, because reader considers it to be true and he has faith in the voice of the narrator and easily understands the story, and it allows the reader to experience the events from narrator's perspective. And what the reader does, reader is looking at the things with the perspective with which the narrator is telling the thing. For example, if certain thing has happened and certain incident had happened, and the narrator explains that it was by the mistake of someone else, then the reader would automatically understand that that this has happened because of the mistake of someone else. It means what the narrator is trying to project, as he himself is the part of the story, reader easily believes in it. This kind of point of view is quite common in narratives like short stories, fiction, etc. And specifically the genres like autobiographies, memoirs and personal narratives also have this kind of point of view, because in such things the writer is talking about his own life, and when he is talking about his own life he would definitely use the pronouns like I, me or we, and the reader who is reading, he would definitely have faith in the words what the narrator is telling. A number of short stories are also written from the perspective of the first person narrative. So even in the short story, such kind of point of view is quite common. Now the second person point of view. It is the least commonly used point of view. A number of times it is not used in short stories and fiction. And what is this? In it the pronoun you is used, and the narrative focuses on the reader, and the reader himself is turned to be a character. So this happens here, that the reader himself, the narrator turns the reader to be a character and addresses the reader as you. It is not a common kind of point of view. That is why you may not be able to recall some short stories which have been written on that point of view, making him and or her an active participant in the narrative. It means the reader himself is the active participant in the narrative. As I told you, it is least commonly used point of view. It is often employed in instructional writings when you are learning how to write a story. In such case, you need the guidance of someone. So in self-help guides and instructional writing or interactive storytelling, where the reader is put into the position of the protagonist, only then this second person point of view is used. Otherwise, in normal short stories, it is not commonly used. Why? Because it is quite challenging to sustain this point of view for an entire story, since it can feel intrusive and demanding for the reader, because it becomes quite difficult for the reader to maintain that style, or to just sustain it for a long time, because it becomes quite intrusive and quite demanding for the readers. So this is the least common one point of view. Now the next one is the third person point of view. It is one of the most common narrative perspective. The third person omniscient narrator has access to correct multiple characters' thought and experiences, uses pronouns such as he, she, or they. Omniscient means present everywhere. So the third person point of view is such a point of view as, with the perspective of the narrator, you may go into the character of each and every character of the story. So the story in itself is narrated by the external narrator. He is not the part of the story. He is not one of the character of the story. And the main focus of narrator's attention is the thoughts, feelings, and experiences of a single character, that is protagonist. The main focus is on the character of the protagonist, and most of the time the narrator talks about the thoughts, feelings, and experiences of that character. But it provides a broader view of the story, enabling the reader to understand different characters' perspective. And what happens? So, as he is the external narrator outside the story, that is why he can also tell us about the psychology of the other characters, the actions and reactions of the other characters, the attitudes of other characters, because he is an observer who can observe all the characters of the story. That is why such kind of point of view offers a more objective and comprehensive view of narrative. This third person point of view is the most common kind of point of view, and in which the narrator is at the liberty to understand each and every character according to his own perspective and explain it to the reader. So most of the stories are written in this third person point of view. Now the another technique is setting. The setting of the story. Normally when we read the story, we do not pay much attention towards the setting. But here I would reveal you how the setting is quite significant technique which is used by the writer. The setting indicates where the story takes place, and it also answers when the story takes place. The setting in a narrative refers to the time, at what time the story takes place, and the place, and also the overall environment in which the story takes place. It includes the physical location. It may be a village, it may be a drawing room, it may be near some mountain hill, or it may be at the top of the hill, wherever it is the physical location, or the time period, whether it is belonging to the present scenario, or it was the story of 50 years back, or it is the story of 100 years back, like that. And the cultural context. The cultural context means you are studying the stories of different culture. Even in India, the different cultures are there. If the story is having the setting of northern India, it would have a different setting, and if it is having the setting of southern India, it would have a different setting, because the cultures are also different. Similarly, the stories which are written in India would have a different cultural context in comparison to the stories which were written in America or France or Germany or Russia. And overall atmosphere that provides a backdrop for the events and characters in the story. Setting is a kind of backdrop. Setting is a kind of background with which the story has been written. So background can never be insignificant. Background is as significant as the foreground or the characters or the plot. The setting can be used in the narrative to create a specific mood or atmosphere. So now the significance of setting. So setting can be used to create a specific mood or atmosphere. To create a mood or atmosphere in the story, the setting may be used. For example, if the writer is describing a dark, mysterious, and ominous place, it might indicate that there is an impending danger. While if the setting is having a serene and tranquil place, it depicts the sense of calm and peace. The setting can be used to create a specific mood. Time period and cultural context used in setting may make the grasp of the story better. If the time period and the cultural context have been described in the story, definitely it makes the grasp of the story for the reader very easy, so that they can easily understand the attitudes of the character and the actions of the characters, which are obviously influenced by that setting. If the characters belong to the particular cultural context, and the cultural context has already been told in the setting part of the story, then it becomes easier for the reader to understand the attitudes of the character. So the setting is also helpful sometimes in understanding the attitudes and actions of the characters. Setting can also depict custom, traditions, and social hierarchies that contribute to characters' interaction and choices. That I told you that the actions and reactions of the different characters can be understood very well if we are well aware about their customs, traditions, and the social setting. Different time periods have their own social norms. If the time period has been depicted, as all of you know, that we evolve with the passage of time. The things which were relevant before 50 years or 100 years are not relevant now. The things have changed a lot. If the time period is depicted in the story very well, we would be able to imagine what kind of the things would be there at that time. And if we are able to imagine those the things which were there uh, 50 years back or the 100 years back, then our understanding of the story would obviously become very good. So the setting part, and in this setting part, the customs, traditions, time period are quite significant. Sometimes setting carries a symbolic meaning. So this is also a device that is used by the writer. He used setting as to denote some symbolic meaning. For example, if in a setting a decaying mansion is shown, then it would definitely symbolize the decline of family's fortune. And on the other hand, if some building with the lush green gardens with painted walls has been depicted, it would definitely represent the prosperity of that family. The writer has not to tell you that the persons who are living in this building would be prosperous. You would automatically understand. But if he is showing a decaying mansion, the wall the paints are falling, the bricks are falling from the walls, then you would definitely understand that the person who is living in this place would definitely have the declining fortunes. In this way, setting can be used to denote the symbolic meaning and to make the things understand to the reader. A vividly described setting can make the story more realistic. If the setting part is very good, if a vivid setting has been there in the story, it make the story more realistic and the reader immerse in that story and take the pleasure of reading that story. And you should always keep in mind whenever you are reading a story, the setting part is as significant as the development of the character or the development of the plot, because setting also denote a number of things as I told you. So thanks for your patience listening, and in the next two videos I would also tell you about some more technical devices. So thanks for your patience listening.